Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 111, Negotiating in Relationships, the Magic of Collaboration. Well, welcome to August 2021. This month, we're going to get all into why learning how to negotiate in healthy ways is so important to having great relationships, how to negotiate in loving ways, and how this skill draws upon so many of the other growth areas we've been talking about here on the show. Working with couples and relationships for years has taught me a great deal. And one of the things I help them do so often is to learn what goes into being able to negotiate and practicing negotiating where they are respectful and kind and loving and assertive, and they collaborate and find solutions together, honoring the other while not dishonoring themselves. So I think it's a big topic that doesn't often get talked about enough. I think the assumption that society makes is that we already know all about negotiating, why it's so important to healthy relationships, and more importantly, how to already do it and do it well. And I don't think that's true. It's one of those assumptions that comes from the idea that your family and your community modeled for you and taught you and guided you on how to negotiate thoughtfully and well. And society doesn't think that your first go-to response is going to be the 5-year-old, oh yeah, well let me tell you a thing or two. Or that you become defensive and focus all on them and stomp out of the room. Because sadly, those are the few ways that you know how to have some kind of control in the situation. Just like a lot of families don't teach kids how to deal with conflict well, because they don't know themselves or they don't want to fight in front of the kids. So a lot of times people get something awful as a template or nothing at all. And they assume a lot. So what do we usually do instead if we don't know how to negotiate well? And mind you, some people can buy a car and really negotiate like a hard ass, but come home and not be able to ask for what they need. So I want to clarify that. One of the biggest things we can tend to do is people please. We can give in, we cave, and end up seething later with resentment, disconnecting just a bit more every time we don't honor what we need, or we are emotionally dishonest. We stuff our feelings and then blow up later, and it's awful. And we kitchen sink them with 3 months worth of grievances. Then we wait till we're real pissed to lay down the atom bomb boundaries because we didn't have the courage to take care of ourselves as we went along. Typically, we'll focus on them. Why can't they? Look how selfish they are. You can't believe they. Can't believe they don't already know what you think, need, and feel. How dare they not read your mind? And we want them to read our minds. We don't have to risk being open and vulnerable and being rejected, right? And shut down, maybe laughed at. What we do instead is we don't own what we need or want directly. We sigh, we forget to do the thing we promised, we beat around the bush, we don't address issues, we're passive aggressive. We get defensive and try to explain and manipulate them into understanding why what we need is important. Guys, this list is endless. I could go on all day. There are so many ways to manipulate and be indirect and passive aggressive. If you aren't sure what that's really about or whether you do it or not, there's plenty of material out there to explore. So I'm not going to get all into that here. I think you have the idea. So that's what we typically resort to instead of learning how to negotiate in healthy ways. we resort to immature behaviors, basically, because we don't know how to take care of ourselves and ask for what we need and not make it about them. We don't know how to focus on the solution. We can stay stuck in the problem. We have so many control issues and fear-based thoughts and feelings. So why? Why do we struggle? Why do we not already know how to negotiate? What we're going to talk about this month is, like I mentioned earlier, we didn't get a template of good negotiating. I mean, if you grew up in a family where there was constant conflict and it was shaming and it was passive-aggressive or aggressive, maybe abusive, you never knew when someone was going to lose it or someone was going to shut down, maybe leave the house. It was scary. If you're a little kid, that's scary. It's very unpredictable, lots of eggshells on the floor. So you learn to avoid conflict at all costs because your only template is people don't solve anything. They just fight. And it can get scary at times. A child's greatest fear is death and divorce, right? So if your parents fought like mad, if they were passive aggressive or aggressive and abusive, that's going to be hard. Some families swing it all in the other direction. They don't deal with anything. They avoid reality. Everything's fine. Don't complain. Suck it up. Look on the bright side, which is wonderful to have some positivity, but we don't want it to be toxic positivity, because if a family can't handle someone bringing an issue to the dinner table, we're not going to learn how to problem solve, and we're not going to learn how to resolve conflict in healthy ways. If you grew up hearing from your mom or dad that what you needed from your little brother was ridiculous and you're older and suck it up, that it wasn't okay for you to be mad because he destroyed your stuff, because your sister went in your room and took things or read your journal. So you learned not to value what you think, feel, and need. That's where boundaries get blurred. A lot of parents don't want to fight in front of their kids, so they don't show them healthy ways that they are addressing conflict with each other and with others in their life, and how they helped you manage conflict with your siblings or your friends in the neighborhood or your cousins or what have you. This month, we're also going to talk about what makes it hard to negotiate, and pretty much based on what we just talked about. Things got really messed up early on in life. One of the biggest issues is not so great self-esteem, lacking self-confidence, self-awareness, the struggle to be clear and direct and assertive. Another thing that makes it hard is victim stance. We're going to talk about that. That's really tough to negotiate if you feel like you're a victim or you're entitled. If you have poor boundaries where you don't know what's yours versus what is theirs, that's going to be really tough, I think, to negotiate in a real collaborative, loving way. I also think if you struggle to grieve and therefore detach, that's going to be really tough to surrender and let go of control of the outcome. It's going to make it really hard for you to be vulnerable and open and emotionally honest when negotiating what you need. Because I think it's all about boundaries and choice. Negotiating, I think, is all about learning to own your own choices and not put them on others. To not make excuses, to not rationalize, to not manipulate. You own it, you stand in your truth, and you own your truth. And you allow others to have theirs. That's another big piece, too, that if I'm not feeling so entitled and beat up and victimized, then I want others to have great things that I want. I want them to feel respected, too. I want to honor what they want as much as I can. It's not all or nothing. It's not either or. When we really work on our self-esteem, it becomes less and less about black and white and whether you are greater or lesser than another person, or they have to lose for you to win kind of thing. It's not about that anymore. It's about what is the best solution for everyone. In other words, it's not about control anymore. It's no longer about fear, about the outcomes. It's about deciding what's more important than that. The friendship, the partnership, the marriage, the colleague relationship. It's no longer about stuffing or minimizing what you need in order to avoid conflict either. Because guess what? It's going to come out later. You're going to leak it out. And if you want to be trusted and respected, and I say this from years of working with relationships and just hearing some universal truths that people tell me over and over again. Here's the thing. They can intuitively feel you're not expressing your truth. They know something's off, and they'll guard their heart. They won't trust you. They can't. You're not being honest. You're not being emotionally honest about what you really think, what you really need, what you really feel. Because you can't feel or come across as genuine. It's not real to be fine with everything or saying the whatever you want all the time under the guise of being so easygoing and laid back. When I sit with easygoing and laid back people, over time I explore with them how that's not really true. They're avoiding conflict. They take the easy route, the path of least resistance. It never ends up in a really good place. It's great to not make a mountain out of everything. It's great to find the middle between taking a stand on some stuff and letting go of some others. But to never have an opinion or to say no or get pissed, that's not real, guys. And it hurts relationships all the time. So this month, we're going to talk about the opposite of all that, healthy connecting. But there are some components to being a good partner, I think, and becoming a good negotiator that are really important. Just as I taught assertiveness training for years, and I realized we have to like who we bring to the table first. We have to work on some things individually to be able to pull that off and sustain it. You can't just teach someone how to be assertive and think they're going to be okay. That's not true. They can know how to do it. They can know the technical, but they're not going to be able to really pull it off and maintain it until they heal on the inside. So we're going to talk about things we're going to work on this month, like how are your I statements? How are you at expressing empathy consistently? Can you be assertive? Can you find your bottom line and express that? How are you with vulnerability, yours and the other person's? Because those can be two very different things. This month, we're going to talk about the how-to practice healthy boundaries, because that is a big part of negotiating. We have to define what belongs to them and what belongs to us, and allow them to deal with what belongs to them. We have to define what is ours and what is not ours, and let go and let other people choose. Just as we are keeping ourselves in a place of choice, we're going to work on how to have a collaborative spirit, not a victim mindset. We're going to work on detachment and empathy. We've talked about it before. We're going to talk about it again because it's so important. We're going to talk about how to own what you're willing and you're not willing to do and your why behind each. What is negotiable for you and what is not. And if you're not sure, there's some work to do, and that's okay. We're going to talk about how to screw it up in the moment and go back later and get real. And how to really own the solution and really gut level and be honest with ourselves about what's going on, what is our agenda if we have one, and what are we really ready to do? Okay, so those are all the things that we're going to talk about in the coming month. How to prepare ourselves as individuals to be able to negotiate in healthy ways, to work on our emotional maturity, to work on our boundaries, to work on our detachment and grief work, empathy, courage, knowing what matters to you and what doesn't and why. Focus on what you really want in that relationship with that person at the end of the day. What is higher value? and identifying where you struggle. You know what's hard and why. Because if you didn't struggle, you'd be doing this already and be doing it very well. So let's take a moment and try to pinpoint where you are. I have a few questions here I just want you to think about. If you're somewhere where you can write them down, that's great, and answer them later and journal about them. But if not, just see what answers come up for you as I ask these. It's really just a little bit of self-awareness. We have to identify where we are first before we can start figuring out what the solution is and start getting to work. So first of all, overall, how well do you think you negotiate? Does it come easily? Or does it make you anxious as hell? That you have to tell someone no or ask for what you need? Or when they come up to you and say they're not happy with something, or they need to talk to you, something needs to give, something needs to change for them. How is that for you? Can you ask for what you need and keep it about you and not them? Easier said than done. Really keeping it about you. Letting go of what they might think about what you need. Letting them choose whether they want to honor you or not. Not giving in to your fear that maybe they're going to get pissed off, or they're not going to like you, or they're going to think this and that about you. Keeping it about you. This is what I need, you say. And it's okay to need what I need and want what I want. My boundaries are my boundaries. Only I get to decide what's negotiable and what isn't. It's not anyone else's job, it's mine. And conversely, is it relatively easy for you to express empathy and validation for what they need? I think most of us could do a better job with that, me included. And I also think it's an inside-out job, like you've heard me say before. When it comes to empathy and compassion, we cannot give another what we won't give ourselves yet. How are you going to validate that they have a right to say no if you don't let yourself say no? Or you think it's mean or cruel or selfish to say no? It's going to be really hard for you to honor when your sister asks you for something. We have to see the value in it first. And empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is, I've been frustrated before, I've been scared before, I've been angry before, I've been excited before, I've been in awe before. So empathy is about, I've been where you are in some way, shape, or form, and I kind of have a sense of what that must feel like right now. So for example, if your sister's really just been frustrated and tired lately, she's had a lot going on, then she asks you to watch the kids for a night so she can go take a break. Can you value that? Can you understand her situation? Does it make sense that she needs that, and why? And why it would be a great thing to offer that to her? Kind of going along with this, how well do you detach and allow others to have their choices? Because I don't think we can negotiate really well in enmeshed situations. In other words, if we are still focused on how someone's feelings and decisions affect us, and we can't handle if they say no to us, or they make a different choice, or they won't ask for what they need. There's a big one. That's a tough one to let go of. Someone you love and care about says, oh yeah, sure, that would be great, when you know deep down that's not true. You can't make them set boundaries for themselves. You have to let go and just model good behavior by doing it yourself. What if their choices are ones that you don't like, especially the ones that involve you? That's hard. What if they're saying no to you? That takes some grief work. That takes some work on our maturity. Is it doable to let go of what other people think, do, and feel and choose? Or is it really hard? Like, what do we secretly have an investment in around, right? We want them to choose X because that would be easier on us, wouldn't it? Like if you have a child who's looking at colleges and you'd rather them stay local so you can be with them, but maybe it's best for them to go to the school out of state that best serves them academically. And finally, are you in the solution before you even approach the other person? Here's a big one. I think we can get so wrapped in the problem and it's hard to step out of it and really own, what is my agenda here? What do I really want? Do I just want to get what I want and to hell with them? Or do I want to find a workable solution because I have to work next to that person every day? Or I'm married to them, or that's my sister, or that's my child, or that's my neighbor. So how do I want to approach things? And am I in the solution, or am I in just the FU mode? Where I'll show you, I'm going to get my power back. I think we don't want to admit it sometimes, but we can still be there, and we're just not ready. We have some grief work to do. We got to come to some acceptance first. So don't be too hard on yourself if you didn't like some of your answers that came up to those questions I asked. All of this is doable, changeable, and possible if you can simply commit to identifying specifically, not vaguely, specifically what you struggle with and get some coaching around working on that. I encourage you to go back and re-listen or listen for the first time to previous episodes where we talked about assertiveness, we talked about boundaries and detachment and self-esteem. Then come hang out with us the rest of the month as we dive in deeper to all of this. So today we introduced the topic we're going to be focusing on all month, healthy negotiating needs in our relationships. We laid out the outline of what gets in the way, how we may never have learned how to do it, and why it's so important to practice it with those we care about. I think negotiating embodies assertiveness, self-confidence, boundaries, and owning our choices, along with respecting that others have the same rights as we do. I think it's the best way to problem solve and keep trust alive in our relationships. Because if you know you can work something out with someone most of the time, you can have a lot of faith and trust in that relationship and relax. Thank you for joining me today. May you stay healthy, grounded, hold on to hope, and stay in your truth. Focus on the good in the world this week. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. Sign up for the newsletter each Tuesday. That's where all the bonus downloads are for the episodes. So, pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.